Welcome back to Just Scrap Radio on BJPenn.com. I'm your host, Cole Shelton. Episode 182 is live at UFC Vegas 100. But first up, we're actually going to be joined by one fighter not on the card. It's someone that I've had a couple people ask about, and I was kind of curious. It's Ryan Hall to kind of talk about what he's been up to. I reached out to Ryan. He was very glad. He said no one's really reached out to him. He wanted to kind of give fans an update. It's a really good chat with Ryan about what he's been up to, when he wants to return, and who he's kind of looking to fight in his return. And he dropped some interesting news about a potential weight class change for him in his return. But really good chat with Ryan. And then we close things out talking to Cody Stamann to preview his fight against Damon Blackshear. Cody knows this is probably do or die for him on a 2-fight losing streak. Was really disappointed in that fight against Taylor Lapilus. He thought he could have done a lot better, but he knows Taylor's a legit guy. Now he fights Damon Blackshear, someone that he's trained with in the past. Said they didn't train very much, so he's not taking much away. But Cody says if he trains with any bantamweights, he sandbags. He doesn't want them to know or that how good he actually is, and then maybe they will fight him down the road. But he likes this match against Damon, especially Damon coming back so soon after getting knocked out in 18 seconds. So Cody thinks he can go there and make a statement. But be sure to share the show, subscribe, and tune in next week for another episode of Just Scrap Radio. All right, we're joined by Ryan Hall to just get a kind of update on what he's been up to. Ryan, how's it going, man?
Hey, not too bad, Cole. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, I just figured I'd reach out. It's been a while since we've seen you. Like last fall, December 2021. Like, what have kind of been the reason for such a long layoff?
What do you call it? Basically, the world's, well, at least for me, the most serious string of unfortunate health stuff that I've ever experienced in my life. I've had 21 general anesthesia surgeries since that fight. Well, no, 18. Actually, I want to count it. No, hold on one second. 19 since that fight. There was 2 prior. But anyway, yeah, man, so it's just kind of been a bit of a journey. Got fallen on, tore my ACL, had to fix plantar plate that was torn under my foot, got fallen on again, had to have a tightrope surgery, the one that like Pat Mahomes, a couple other people, I think Tua Tagovailoa had. That, of course, the ACL got infected and had to have a couple like emergency septic arthritis, follow-ons from that. And then the tightrope, I was actually allergic to the hardware that they put in me somehow. So had to have that redone. And it's been interesting, but, kind of finally on the back end of it and doing a heck of a lot better. So in the meantime, I've just been helping out Corey, Sanhagen, a couple other buddies, Ton Lee, and doing my
surgeries in that time. Like, did you think like your career is over and you'll never be able to fight again?
Honestly, it was no. There's always a question. I mean, right before I fought Ilia Topuria in 2021, I started to have like I got fallen on then. Actually, I went 15 years, like completely bulletproof. Like every single time you got banged up, you were fine. Every single time someone almost fell, they missed you. I ended up getting fallen on and I tore my hip right prior to that fight, like pretty badly. And I didn't really appreciate how badly that really affected my ability to move, and there was a lot of like follow-on body issues from that. And anyway, then long and short, it was just kind of, I think you get, I guess at that point, how old was it at the time? Yeah, so like I guess that was 17 years of combat sport at that point. When it was going, and it's just like kind of you spend all that time competing, training, all that other stuff, and then to a certain extent, the same thing that makes you good or makes you tough, can kind of do you in a little bit. And, you spend 17 years kind of being like, whatever, to that up. And sometimes it comes all at once. But the big one recently is actually I'd had a torn shoulder. I had a 270-degree tear in my labrum, and a torn rotator cuff, big old cyst in my shoulder that was causing like weird nerve stuff too. And getting that all fixed as well. Has been huge. So it's just it's been interesting because about half the surgeries that I had, more than half the surgeries that I had, were actually oops, we screwed that one up, sorry dude, let's run it back. Didn't mean to goof up. I had 6 elbow surgeries, 5 knee surgeries, because it's an interesting thing sitting on the outside. As a patient, you don't really have the ability to vet doctors and medical staff.
Mm-hmm.
And things can happen, but every now and then you end up going in one direction when you should have gone another, and you're kind of just along for the ride, even as a professional athlete. And that was the hardest part, kind of just going like, hey, when is this going to be better? Because there was a period of time when it was in pretty substantial daily pain for a while. But, again, being on the backside of that now, you never lost hope that you'd have the opportunity to be back. And I think that one of the nice things about being, a more strategic, and having, I'm trying to do my best to have a technically sound and kind of mechanically sound approach that doesn't overly rely on athleticism. Is that in the event that gets knocked down a hair, it doesn't hurt you quite as badly.
How frustrating has that been? Because like fighting's a young man's game. Like you can't do it forever, and they kind of took quite a few years away from your career then by just kind of messing up all those surgeries.
I got to be honest with you, man. That was frustrating. I mean, I've been in the UFC for 9 years, and I had long stretches of time where nobody would fight me. That was, this is the third separate 2+ year period during my time in the UFC of no fights. This one was on me, though. So to speak, because that's just injuries. The other two were nobody would fight. I'd fight after fight after fight get declined, or fight after fight fall through, and then. It turns out that your only loss is to, under really difficult circumstances. I had a bunch of injuries going into that fight, broke my hand, broke my face on Elias's forehead. And he's a great fighter anyway. And that was one where, the only fight you lost is to the current champ. But coming off of that and being able to get back in and beat a tough guy in Darrett Minner, and then having the hope that I'd actually just signed on to fight, who was it? I can picture him. It's killing me. He's tough. Philly guy. But anyway, long and short.
Pat Sabatini?
Sabatini, that's right. I just signed on to fight Pat Sabatini, and that's when I tore my ACL, got fallen on at a seminar. Just kind of play wrestling gently with somebody, and it was an accident, but they did something unsafe, and that was the beginning of kind of like the saga. But anyway, that was, it is frustrating. It's easy to sit and go like, what could be or what could have been. And, if I'd have fought Topuria when he was better regarded, then maybe, I would have sat in the rankings still, even if I was even with a loss after coming back after win. But, all you can do is, deal with things as they come. And, I'm excited to have the opportunity to build back. And, I'm always really grateful that honestly, the UFC has been great. Sean Shelby's always been fantastic. He knows that I've really been through it. And also it's nice dealing with somebody that knows for sure that the reason I wasn't fighting for all that time was because I was being turned down. And I think that kind of helps with the ability to come back later. But as you said, fighting is a young man's game, but it's also, a game for people that know how to fight. And that's something that I do know how to do. It's not perfect, but, working, and I've done my best to improve in the time off and stay useful to my buddies and learn from them. And I look forward to getting back in the ring, in 2025.
Do you kind of have like a rough time frame of when you'd want to return?
So I had shoulder surgery 10 weeks ago, and it's that's been a godsend. Huge thanks to Dr. David Higgins, who was actually a good family friend of my wife's, and done a bunch of surgeries for her. He actually fixed my knee, oddly enough, because I'd had my ACL surgery and it just never really got better. There was meniscus problems, and then I had changed docs, and he took a look at it, and he was the third one and made a big difference. And finally, like, that's back, because you just don't really feel like the same level of athleticism without that. And that's obviously, in a fighting context, kind of disconcerting when people are trying to take your head off. But anyway, I'll be looking forward to, kind of finishing up my rehab on my shoulder over the next 2 months or so, and then being able to meaningfully get into training. And I haven't meaningfully trained in a long time, but it's the thing that makes you special. I think when you work hard enough for long enough, will be there when you need it. So I'll need to get back in shape and sharpen back up. But I'll hope for, maybe March, April, if things work out the way that I hope. And, I'll look forward to picking back up. And I can't be sure if I'm going to fight at 135 or 145 pounds, but it'd be one or the other. It kind of depends on what's out there, because I've always been a 135 pound fighter who fought at 45 and 55, because I just never knew if people would accept fights. So I didn't want to hang around, at the lower weight all the time. But for this one coming back, I'll be curious to see what's available at both weight classes. And I'll have to ask the UFC and see what they say.
You think you're actually a natural 135er?
It's not even a question. I weigh 158 pounds walking around.
Why haven't you been at 35? Is it just because harder to get fights at 35, or is it just the fights got off? You just didn't want to cut weight?
I mean, I did nothing but win for the most part. So, it wasn't like, and people didn't duck me because they thought they were going to win. I mean, of course, you can win or you can lose. Obviously every single person that said no could have potentially won. But, I fought the Ultimate Fighter at 155, which was great because I just walk onto the scale. And then at 45, I just didn't have experience cutting weight at that time, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I felt comfortable and I felt good, and there were guys that I really wanted to compete with. But now, at this stage of my career and at this stage of the UFC's development, I kind of, again, if they would let me fight Bryce Mitchell coming back, really tough guy like that, obviously I would. But in the event that's not, we'll see what's available, but I would be definitely open to fighting at 135 because all my buddies that fight at 35 were my size or even slightly heavier. So
All good. You kind of mentioned Bryce Mitchell there. Like,
yeah, I would love for the opportunity to have like meaningful fights to kind of get back into things at 45. It's tough. I know, having been gone for so long, things have gone on and other people have done well and earned the opportunity to, get the bigger fights. So I don't know if it's reasonable for me to, I'll actually have to ask, Sean Shelby and see what he says. I don't know what's reasonable for me to expect in terms of, opponents coming back. My only loss was in a fight that I was narrowly winning up until the point that I decided to lose it really, really badly and have Ilya punch me in the face a bunch of times really hard. But the only fight that I've lost is the champ, and that's after years of being ducked. So you never know. Maybe there'll be people that would be willing, or interesting people who'd be willing to fight. But what I just be looking for is the same thing I've always looked for, is the opportunity to get back in, hopefully consistently. And I know it's not the first time I've said that, but I actually do mean it. And, you hope circumstance kind of doesn't conspire against you, but I would just want to fight, the most difficult, meaningful opposition that I could. And, and kind of that's always been the goal, and just see where it takes you. But obviously a guy like Bryce is very tough, and it would be neat to compete, against someone that, obviously if you do well, it puts you right back in the mix of things. But, I bring him up only because he's someone that I appreciate and somebody I respect, and it would be a very tough and interesting. Obviously there's a lot of guys out there that would be great opponents, and I just look forward to getting back to it and earning the opportunity to do it, because, this is an interesting thing. No matter how decent you are at fighting, you don't get paid $5 million to be in there. And if one thing I've learned over the last couple of years is that, your health is not to be taken lightly. So it's one of those ones where I would want to be pushing towards something meaningful, not just back in there fiddling around. I'm not here to just kind of give it one last go. I would really want to do my best and face the best people that I could. And that way, if you do end up getting banged up, you go, I understand why I did it. But otherwise, like, I'm not complaining about pay. It's just, you don't get paid. No one gets paid enough to walk around feeling like a cripple for years, which I spent 2 entire summers on crutches. So that wasn't super cool.
Do you worry people will still be ducking you and turning you down even at your turn? Like, I can see kind of both sides where you are a difficult matchup, and I could see like, oh, he's 40, like he's coming off a bunch of injuries, like maybe now's the time to fight him. Like, do you worry?
If now isn't the time, then I don't know when is. Obviously, there's a lot of good people, and every single person, in a parallel universe, I could have been in the top 5. If people would have fought. The only got one loss, and to someone that's been known to do kind of well. But at the same time, it's all of those people that I fought and managed to beat definitely could have beat me way back when. A fight is a one-off. It's like March Madness, but substantially more volatile, because if you lose the first quarter badly enough, it's a wrap. There's no coming back, and you don't get 10 tries. It's not a best of 7 series. So I guess what I would say is I'll be curious to see what happens, but I would hope that people would be interested in fighting. And again, if anything, I don't understand how I could not be more appealing to fight than before. Whatever people have to think or not think of me before, it's, I'm 3 years out now, which is a long time. And then obviously coming off of injuries. So that's a question mark. And then, obviously a little bit older. So I'll be almost 40 by the time I get back in, or even 40. And, but then again, who knows, maybe I've come up with something a little bit better than before, and we'll see.
Just a couple more things. So you've kind of mentioned your only loss is to the champ. Like, are you surprised to see what Ilya's done since that? Like, not becoming the first guy to knock out Max and knocked out Volk. Like, it kind of shows how kind of crazy power he has.
He does. I mean, he really cracks, and that was one thing that, like, he's a very good fighter. Obviously he's a very good fighter. He's a very good fighter. And it's, things kind of, that's all you can say is he's done well. He's, he's put his money where his mouth is, and he's gotten the results. Max was fighting well up until that moment. Volk was doing pretty well. It's it's interesting how time and place matter. And it's people come along, and again, if he were to fight Max 5 times, what would the outcome be? Hard to say. But in that particular instance, Ilya's fought great, and he's beaten everyone they put in front of him, and that's all you can say. What I would say is that it was from my side of things, kind of frustrating because I went into that fight with so many injuries. I had 2 surgeries in camp, got fallen on. I feel like I wish the version of me that showed up to fight Darren Elkins had been able to walk into that ring, because that was an interesting thing. Illy's very powerful and very dangerous. And I remember like all of the karate bounce and movement was gone because of the tears on my feet and my hip. And I remember like ducking out of the way of punches and going like, whoa, this is way more way more disconcerting than usual, because stuff that you're used to making miss by a little more was barely getting out of the way. But it's all I can say is he's done great, and he clearly deserves to be where he is. And I would just look forward to the opportunity. If there's one fight I could ever get back in my life and have the opportunity to play again, it would be that one.
Just final thing I want to touch on was you obviously mentioned earlier that you've been training a lot with Corey Sandhagen. I think he's one of the best bandweights in the world. Like, even though he's like coming up that loss to Umar, like he can still hang with and beat any of those guys. Like, what do you kind of make of his skill and like where he's kind of been in the last couple of years?
Oh, Corey's fantastic, man. I feel so fortunate to have the opportunity to train with him. He's another guy like Tom Lee, who's just made such an unbelievable difference for me in my career. And I hope having the opportunity to be out there supporting Corey over the last couple of years has been really a pleasure and a privilege to get to see his process, get to see his skills grow. And he was great when we first met. He called me up in 2019, not long after I fought Darren Elkins, and he just said, "Hey, my name's Corey. I'd love to come and train." I'm like, of course you can come and train. What are you, crazy? I think he was like number 8 or something like that at the time. And you never know if you're going to get along with somebody, but super sharp guy, great skills, very cerebral, loves to learn, fantastic performer too. In addition to his actual martial arts skills, I think he, as well as anybody I've ever been around, he shows up on fight night. And the fight with Umar was interesting. I think, I would have loved to see that go again. And I think with some kind of strategic tweaks, it could have looked a little bit different because but Umar fought a great fight, and I think that Umar actually made the adjustments in that fight that were necessary to kind of pivot after the very competitive tough first round. But it was a great fight, and I know that Corey has the skills in him to beat anybody out there. And again, he's again another guy like Ton. Those guys work, and they make me want to be better as their training partner, as their friend. So it's just been a privilege to be there. And honestly, I really owe Corey kind of big time for even allowing me to be around. I feel, because that was one thing, as I was going through all the surgeries and all the recovery, being able to be there and have like the purpose to support Corey, to support Ton. Ton got he won the interim title from 1FC and then fought for the belt again, it's Corey was out there, he fought Cheeto. I get to be in the corner for that. Rob Font's another great fighter, Song. And then of course, Umar, that was something, in a relatively speaking kind of dark time in the life and times of me. It was really, I felt fortunate to be able to have like an outlet where I could, try to help assist positively, and also learned a lot. So I just have nothing but appreciation for Corey, and I know he's going to continue to do great.
Oh, well, Ryan, that's all I have for you. Thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate you hopping on and kind of giving everyone an update.
Thank you so much, Cole. It's great to talk to you, man. I hope to catch up again.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, we're joined by UFC bandweight Cody Stamann, who's back in action here on November 9th. Cody, how's it going, man?
Great. Just in between sessions, middle of camp. It's just nonstop, man. It's just nonstop work.
Quicker turnaround than it seems like you're used to as of late. Like, how happy were you to? It's still like 4 months later, but like how happy are you to get another fight, especially get another one in this year?
Yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I'd fight every 2 months, 3 months. But there's so many people at bantamweight now. Like, I've tried to kind of be like a bantamweight and featherweight, just because there's more opportunities that way. But I need an awesome performance November 9th to be able to kind of do that. You know what I mean? So I'm looking to get the job done quick November 9th, and then maybe try my hand at featherweight as well.
Just look on your last fight against Taylor. What you take away from that one?
Yeah, man. Preparation, perfect. I felt like I was so well prepared for that fight, physically, mentally. Then I went out there and I just literally threw the game plan out the window. Like, there were certain combinations and things I knew I had to do to win that fight, and I just did not do them. I've always been, I feel like somebody with a pretty high fight IQ, and for whatever reason that night, I was a little bit too willing to throw myself into the fire, like fighting a good counter striker like Lapalus, who's very like clean and technical. You have to you have to fight him a certain way, and I just didn't do it. And that's on me. That's not on anybody else. My coaches, everybody, my training partners, everybody had me super well prepared in that fight. But like I have to execute a game plan at this level. Otherwise, I gotta. Otherwise, I'm gonna be on the wrong end of a tough decision.
After that fight, like, was there worry that like that might be it for you? Like, you never know with the UFC, especially if you lose 2 in a row. Like, they're with Contender Series coming in and then bringing in a whole bunch of new guys. Like, was that ever a concern for you?
Yeah, I mean that's always a concern. When you lose a fight, like you're like, did I just lose that fight and lose my job? That's the reality of the business that we're in. This is a zero-sum game. It's win or die, and yeah, of course, I've had like those feelings, a lot in my UFC career. Even after my first loss in the UFC, I was like, man, is that it for me? And I guess you just have to get comfortable with those uncomfortable feelings and just try to be optimistic as you can and hope that they're going to give you another opportunity. And at this point, I feel like I've kind of proven my worth at UFC. I've been around a long time. I've fought everybody. Anyone. Like, I was never the guy that would say no to a fight. And I think that's kind of what the UFC looks for. If you're like one of those guys that's super picky about who you fight, when you fight, where you fight, and you lose, that's one thing. But if you're one of those guys that says yes to everybody, and I have said yes to everyone the UFC's ever offered me, that's a different situation.
And then getting Damon Blackshear, like, how familiar were you with him?
So actually, he trained in Las Vegas for a little while. So I've actually trained with him a few times. Real familiar. I mean, I know him. I know his style. I think I've watched most of his UFC fights. So yeah, I mean, actually, I got the date and all that stuff long before I ever got the opponent. So I didn't know who I was fighting. I just knew that there was an opportunity November 9th, and did I want to take the opportunity? And I was like, yeah, I don't care who it is. And then I found out it was him. And I think stylistically, I think I match up a lot better with Damon Blackshear than Taylor Lapalus for sure. Because Damon comes forward and he's an aggressive dude, and those are the kind of guys that I feel like I do the best against.
I know you take any fight to talk with you, but was there any ever thought of like, is there anyone else that a guy that you've trained with in the past, or did that not really matter to you?
No, I don't feel like I really trained enough with him. You know what I mean? And not only that, but like when I trained with guys that I could potentially fight, I always sandbag. You know what I mean? Like I'm not showing them anything slick. I'm not doing anything crazy. Like, because I want them to accept a fight against me. So like strategically in my head, um, I don't ever like give those guys my best because I know that eventually we could see ourselves across the cage. So I'm always like super super cautious about how I train with them, and I just pretty much do nothing. I just, like I said, I just sandbag. But no, I mean we didn't train together enough to be like that familiar. Like, we're not friends. We're not close. We're not pen pals or anything. So yeah, there's gonna be no love lost. I'm gonna have no problems trying to take this kid's head off.
Are you surprised he's returning this quickly? Just after getting knocked out pretty quickly in his last fight?
I am a little bit surprised, but I'm happy. I'm happy. You know what I mean? Dudes that get knocked out are normally more susceptible to getting knocked out again. And I'm not training to win a decision. Like, let's be honest. Like, I need a big win. I need to put someone's lights out, and I think he might just be the candidate for that. I definitely think that his style, he's going to create a lot of car crashes in there. And I think one of us is going unconscious, and I got this big ass head. It's hard to hurt me up top. So, yeah, if someone's going out in this fight, I think it's probably him.
Are you kind of viewing this fight as do or die then? Like you said there,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, dude. I mean, I have no illusions of the situation that I'm in, that I put myself in. I know what's at stake. I know that my job in the UFC is at stake. I know that what happens in my career moving forward is at stake, and I'm not taking any of that lightly. I am 100% embracing the fact that like this is a do or die moment for me, and it's going to come quick, and I need to be mentally and physically ready. I'm flying people in from out of state. I'm doing absolutely everything I can in my recovery. I'm going to make sure that there's no stone left unturned, and I'm going to do absolutely everything I can to be successful, physically and mentally for this. And like I said, like we're both in a pretty similar situation, so I'm expecting him to do the same. I think this is going to be an absolute all-out war. I definitely think that we're both going to bring our best, and whoever's more prepared is gonna come out on top. And I think that's going to be me.
Who are the main guys you're working with for this camp then?
So I have a couple of staple guys: Devin King, Chad Decker, who's a young pro, like 5-0 guy. Those are like my main training partners. Then I train a lot with the Hawaiians. I call them Team Hawaii at Extreme, but Dan Ige, Kai Kamaka, like those guys are staples. Patchy Mix is someone that I train with quite a bit. Him and I spar a couple times a week, and he's giving me a really good look. I'm actually flying out another really good young professional, Mo Miller. He'll be here next week, and he's got the perfect body type for my opponent. So I'm just gonna not necessarily focusing so much on a game plan as I am just like trying to get the looks and trying to get the body types, to be prepared, because I mean ultimately like this isn't going to be like I'm obviously going to have to be technical and I'll have to do certain things, but really I think this is going to be a war of attrition. It's going to come down to like who wants it more, who's willing to go, wrestle another 3 seconds in a scramble, who's willing to who's able to throw those big hard shots in the third round. It's I could see myself putting him away fast, but like that's not at all what I'm preparing for. I'm preparing for like the best Damon Blackshear that's ever set foot in the cage. And I hope he's preparing for the exact same thing out of me, because we're both in the same situation. We're both fighting for our jobs. We're fighting for our livelihood moving forward. And, I've been in this situation before. I have experience here, unfortunately. But, I know what to expect. And I know that I got to bring out everything I got, on November 9th.
Is that something you've done in the past, is fly out all these different guys? Because in Vegas, you get like so many different guys come in, or is this something you're doing a bit different for this camp?
Yeah, it's just something it's just it's such a specific body type. It's hard to find guys that, can emulate that. But I've followed Mo Miller's career. He's actually been out here before. I've trained with him, and like he is to a T, so much like this guy, like in so many aspects. Like I thought of him right away. When I signed this fight. So this is something that, a little bit different. Normally I just kind of had the guys that I always train with, and I work with those guys. But yeah, this is like just another thing that's gonna, I think, help get me mentally and physically prepared. For this matchup in particular. And yeah, and then along with that, I'm doing some other recovery stuff maybe that I should have been doing. Probably this entire time. Doing hyperbaric and doing a few other things just to make sure that I'm a little bit fresher, because, if I'm being honest, my last fight, I felt like everything was great, like the entire camp. I did like a crazy like 12-week camp, but I felt like the last 2 weeks I was just worn out. Like I didn't, so this time around I'm trying to be a little smarter and focus a little bit more on my recovery, and not get myself to a point where I'm so overtrained that I'm just not performing the way that I know I'm capable of performing.
Kind of build on that. Like, how do you kind of see this one playing out then?
Well, man, it would be really nice if I went out there and just put him down in 20 seconds, right? A little deja vu for him. And I definitely think I'm capable of doing that. But I think the reality is that, he's probably going to be a lot more cautious this time around. I think he's probably learned from his mistakes, and he's going to be a lot more technical and rigid in certain situations. I definitely think that this is like, however long it lasts, it's going to be an absolute war. Just because we're both going to be fighting to the death for every inch in this fight. I think that I'm going to have the gas tank and the mindset to kind of weather the storms that, you know, this fight's going to bring. And, you know, eventually I'm going to get him out of there.
I think kind of the last time your back was really this much against the wall was going to that Eddie Wineland fight, and that was one of your better performances. Like, is there something to it of like kind of thrive when the pressure is kind of the highest for you?
Yeah, I wish it didn't really take that much. You know what I mean? Like that much pressure to really like get me to the point where I'm like just an absolute killer savage. But yeah, I mean that's another situation. Like, I mean, I honestly thought like in that Eddie Wineland fight, I was like, I'm done. You know what I mean? Like I'm you know, after this fight, I'm probably I'm out of the UFC. So I was like, I have no regard for like what happens. And I kept telling my coaches in the back, like before the fight, I was like, listen, this isn't gonna last long. You know what I mean? One of us is going out like soon. And they were like, dude, just relax, you know, fight smart, all this stuff. And I was like, no. And I was telling them all the way until, you know, they're putting Vaseline on me and stuff, and I'm hugging them, you know. And I told them, I was like, oh, listen, I'll be right back. And they were like, you know, calm down, it's okay. And I'm like, no, like I'm literally going out, and I'm getting in a fist fight until one of us falls down. And like that was the mentality that I had going into that fight. And you know, I'm gonna bring a lot of that into this fight too. You know, I don't want to have a decision win, but I mean, I believe that I'm capable of that. But the reality is like I need a huge performance to propel me to where I think I should be already. You know, so I'm training to knock someone's head off. And you know, Damon Blackshear, you know, has shown that he's got a chink in his armor, and it's his chin. And so I'm aiming for that thing. And for 15 minutes, I'm gonna be trying to knock his lights out.
Just final thing, you get the win here. Like, what is kind of the goal going forward for you?
You know, I like to be more active. You know, I'd really like to get, you know, 3-4 fights in a year. But in order to do that, you know, I need to string some big wins together. You know, because you notice when guys win, you know, they're back in the cage faster. And you know, looking at like my age, how much time I have left, like I really need to be like super focused on nothing but fighting for the next year or 2 years, you know, if I'm really going to make something happen. And I've worked tirelessly for 10 years to be good at the sport. And, you know, I need to like condense that into the next 2 years and just really be like laser focused on my fighting career and nothing else. And, you know, that's exactly what I plan to do. I just plan to, you know, be, you know, in this win or die situation, you know, for the next couple of years, and to really make something happen and put myself in a position to be in those big fights, because I know that I can beat anybody in the world on any given night. You know, I have the talent to do it. I have the athletic ability to do it. I just haven't shown that in the cage, and it's about time I started doing that, because, you know, I'm running out of opportunities and time to do that.
Well, Cody, I appreciate the time as always. Thanks for doing this again.
Of course, brother.